All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling a super important topic, especially if you're revising for history exams, the League of Nations. We're going to focus on how it handled the messy and often pretty violent border disputes that popped up all over the place in the 1920s. Think of this as your go-to guide for understanding its wins, its losses, and, well, what ultimately went wrong.
So picture this. World War I, the war to end all wars, is finally over. The dust is settling, but the world looks completely different. Old empires have vanished, and the map of Europe has been totally redrawn. This created a massive, massive problem. With all these new countries and new borders, who's going to step in when arguments started? And believe me, they were definitely going to start. Who was going to make sure this fragile new peace actually lasted?
The answer, or what was supposed to be the answer, was the League of Nations. It was created at the Paris Peace Conference with a very clear job: to be the world's new referee. The idea was that it would step onto the field of international politics, blow the whistle on any country acting aggressively, and help nations sort out their problems with words, not with weapons. To stop another catastrophic war from ever happening again.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll set the scene and talk about the league's job as this new referee. Then, we'll check out its early track record. Some good, some not so good. After that, we're doing a deep dive into two really crucial crises, the Corfu incident and the Bulgaria incident. We'll put them side by side to figure out why the league acted so differently in each case. And we'll finish up by pinpointing the fatal flaws that these events really brought to light.
The peace treaties of 1919 and 1920 didn't just end the war, they completely re-engineered Europe. You had new countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia appearing on the map, and borders were being moved all over the place. As you can imagine, this was a total minefield of potential conflicts. People were suddenly living in different countries, and old tensions were bubbling up over who owned what land. The brand new League of Nations was the one everyone was looking at to keep a lid on all of it.
So, how did the league actually do in those first few years? Well, honestly, it was a bit of a mixed bag. It had some real wins, for sure, but it also had some pretty embarrassing failures right from the get-go. This early record kind of hinted that our new referee wasn't always powerful enough to make everyone play by the rules. Let's take a look at the evidence.
What's really interesting here is the pattern that starts to show up. Look at the Åland Islands case between Sweden and Finland. The league stepped in, decided the island should go to Finland, and guess what? Both countries, who were relatively small, just accepted it. A clear success. Same thing with Upper Silesia. The league organized a vote, split the region between Germany and Poland, and avoided a war. Great. But then you get to Vilna. Poland, a bigger, more aggressive nation, just marched in and took the city from Lithuania. The league told them to leave, but Poland basically just ignored them. A total failure. So you see the pattern? The league was great at sorting out squabbles between countries that were willing to listen, but it really struggled when a more powerful country decided to use force.
And that brings us to the first huge test for the league's authority, the Corfu incident in 1923. This wasn't just some small disagreement. Oh no, this was a direct challenge from one of the league's own top members, a major European power. Let's see how the ref handled this one.
So, what was the Corfu incident all about? In a nutshell, an Italian general, a guy named Tellini, was actually working for the league drawing a new border between Greece and Albania. He and his team were murdered on Greek territory. Italy's new leader, a fascist named Benito Mussolini, was absolutely furious, and, more importantly, he saw this as the perfect chance to look tough on the world stage.
And things escalated fast, really fast. Just 2 days after the murders, Mussolini sends this crazy ultimatum to Greece with a list of impossible demands. When Greece couldn't agree to everything, Mussolini sent his navy to bombard and occupy the Greek island of Corfu. Around 15 civilians were killed. Greece, of course, ran straight to the League for help. The League did condemn Italy's aggression, but Mussolini just arrogantly said it was none of their business. The whole thing then got passed over to another group, the Conference of Ambassadors, who ended up forcing Greece to apologize and pay Italy a huge pile of money.
So let's be crystal clear about what just happened. The aggressor, Italy, got everything it wanted. The league was pushed to the sidelines. So why? Well, it's because the league's two biggest players, Britain and France, couldn't agree. Britain was ready to use its powerful navy to force Mussolini to back down, but France said no way. They were worried about upsetting Mussolini because they needed his support against Germany. So, in the end, a big, powerful country used violence, spat in the face of the league, and was actually rewarded for it. A truly terrible precedent was set.
Now fast forward just 2 years to 1925. An almost identical crisis breaks out on the border between Greece and Bulgaria. But this time, the result was completely, and I mean completely, different. As we go through this one, I want you to really think about how it contrasts with what happened at Corfu.
The setup sounds exactly the same, right? There's a tense little incident on the border, some Greek soldiers are killed, and in response, the Greek army invades Bulgaria. It seriously looks like a carbon copy of the Corfu incident. Only this time, Greece is the one playing the part of the aggressor.
But here is where the story completely flips. Bulgaria did something very smart. It didn't fight back. Instead, it put its faith in this system and appealed directly to the League for help. And this time, the League acted with lightning speed. It immediately condemned the Greek invasion, ordered Greece to pull its troops out, and demanded that they pay compensation to Bulgaria. And with Britain and France both threatening economic sanctions, Greece really had no choice but to back down and obey.
And there you have it. In this case, the League's authority was upheld. The referee made a call, and it stuck. The invasion was stopped, and peace was restored. On paper, this was a massive, textbook success for the League. It was a perfect example of how the whole idea of collective security was supposed to work.
So we have two really similar situations with two totally different endings. One is a humiliating failure for the League, the other is a huge success. This is the absolute key question you need to be able to answer. Why? What was the crucial difference between Corfu and Bulgaria?
This slide just lays out the uncomfortable truth. The single biggest difference was the status of the country doing the invading. In 1923, the aggressor was Italy, a major power, a winner of World War I, and a permanent member of the League's own council. In 1925, the aggressor was Greece, a much smaller, less influential nation. It really looked like the League had one set of rules for the big boys and another set for everyone else.
And don't just take my word for it. The historian Zara Steiner nails it with this quote. When it was Italy causing trouble, Britain and France decided to sacrifice justice because they wanted to keep their political relationship with Mussolini smooth. But when a smaller country like Greece was the aggressor, they had no problem flexing their muscles and enforcing the rules. This exposed the fundamental truth. The League was only as strong as its most powerful members allowed it to be.
So when you put these two crises side by side, what do they really tell us about the League of Nations? Well, they shine a massive spotlight on some fundamental, maybe even fatal, weaknesses that were built into its very design. Let's break down exactly what they were.
First and foremost, the Corfu incident showed that powerful members would always put their own self-interest ahead of the League's ideals. This connects directly to another huge problem. The League had no army. It was completely dependent on its members to enforce its decisions, and as we saw, they weren't willing to do that against a powerful friend. And of course, looming over all of this was the fact that the most powerful country in the world, the USA, had never even joined. That always undermined the League's claim to be a truly global authority. These weren't just small teething problems. They were deep structural flaws right at the heart of the organization.
So the 1920s really exposed this glaring double standard at the heart of the League of Nations. Yeah, it could be a decent referee for games between smaller teams, but it was basically powerless when one of the star players decided to break the rules. And this leaves us with a massive and pretty chilling question to think about. If the League couldn't even stand up to Mussolini in 1923, how on earth was it going to cope with the even bigger threats from the dictators of the 1930s?